Welcome back to the channel. This video is not really about anything. I'm just up in my shed in the woods and I've been changing the wick on my paraffin heater. I didn't film it because I wasn't sure if the wick I'd bought was the right one or how to do it, so it was a bit of stumbling about in the dark, but it seems to have worked. It's got two burners on it, the paraffin heater, so next time when I change the other wick, which won't be for a while, I don't suppose, but when I do, I'll film that one because I've now got some idea what I'm doing, and then everyone that wants to can correct me. It's just the way the world is. But it's January 2023. I think this will be Waffle in the Woods number 3, I suppose. It's a dry day, overcast, grey, and the wind's getting up, hence I've dropped my tarp. Last time I was up I fitted a couple of tarps, one each side of the veranda, so when the wind's blowing I can drop it, and makes a vast improvement when you're sat in front of the fire if you haven't got wind blowing all the heat away. So I can sit here without a coat on, just with a fleece on. I'm enjoying a coffee and a cigar while she, that must be a bird, is out hunting steel balls from the slingshot range. She's got one of those high-powered magnets and she likes to go fishing for ball bearings. One of the dogs is with me, she keeps wandering off, so she's on a long line, so she's sulking, and the other one is over there chewing a stick and just being, no, he's got an old tennis ball he's destroying. Yeah, so it's just I'm not at work today, we're getting out of the house. As I was saying, I wanted to change the wick in my heater. I'll post a little short showing you the heater I'm talking about. But I acquired it some years ago, and it sat for years under the bench in my shed, and I never really used it. I think I used it once for many years. But coming up here in all weathers, it's nice to have somewhere warm to get out of the weather. So you can just put it on low, keep the door shut, and the inside of the shed's toasty warm when you just want to go and get a warm. We've had our annual general meeting at Camp Bob, so we've got some idea of what we're doing for the year going forward. I won't bore you with all the details because they'll be released as and when on the North East Bushcraft page, I suppose. We've fitted a wood stove in the 12x12. I think we might have to revisit that flue. We were up here a week or so ago and we sat around the main fire pit, and I think there was only 6 or 7 of us, and the wind was howling. The stove hadn't been fitted, and I think that's what pushed us to fit it, because we all thought that if the stove had been fitted in the 12x12 you could have sat in there and got out the wind while we were enjoying a chat and a few bevies. So anyway, what's going on in January of 2023? Not a lot, not much has changed in the world since my last Waffle in the Woods. All the major stories are still very much the same. Politicians, sleazy stuff, more. This time it's the ex-Chancellor got into trouble with the HMRC over his tax returns. Apparently made an error, and he was fined for it, but it's not saying it's a deliberate error, it was just an error. And people are saying he should have known better, blah, blah, blah. Well, if you were a multi-millionaire, I dare say you're not doing your taxes yourself. I would say you've got accountants doing your taxes, and technically, they've dropped the bollock. Yeah, ultimately it's your thing, but HMRC said it wasn't deliberate. It might have been erring on the side of that, you never know. He might have been chancing his arm, but anyway, he paid his fine. Job done, as far as I'm concerned. If he'd done anything criminal, he should have been locked up for it, but there you go. Yeah. What's going on in the Ukraine? War still in the Ukraine. The weather's halting most of the big advances. They're got a fairly stable front line. It's moving a little bit one way and the other. Ukrainians are after main battle tanks. Well, I think we're sending 14 Challengers and some self-propelled guns. They're trying to get Leopard 2s. Poland wants to give Ukraine Leopard 2s, but they need the okay of the German government. And you might say, well, why do they need the okay of the German government? Because all the spares and repair stuff come from Germany. And if that dries up, then Poland's fleet of Leopard 2s are going to be limited in use. But they're going to need offensive weapons like tanks come the fine weather, when it all kicks off again. You cannot trust Putin. I was going to say the Russians, but I suppose it's like everything else. People are people all over the place. And you believe what you're being fed in the media because you don't have much choice. Suppose in the so-called Free West you've got other sources of independent, so allegedly independent media. But I suppose you have to take everything with a big pinch of salt. But I suppose if so many Russians rely on state media for their information, then they're only going to have... well, why would you not believe your own government, I suppose? People are generally people. I was surprised to find out just how, I want to say backwards, that's not the right word, less developed in a Western sort of way so much of Russia is. Apparently they don't have what we would call a metalled road or a paved road. Mind you, lots of places in America don't have that, especially when you get up to Alaska and whatever. They have dirt roads or gravel roads or whatever they call them, because of the distances, I suppose. But, you know, vast numbers of Russians don't have indoor toilets. They have outhouses still. Not that we've got an outhouse here. We've got outhouses for the camp in general, and, you know, I've built a little one for she that must be a bird out the back. And that can be very effective. But these villages dotting the I suppose when you get away from big cities in Russia, you're stepping back in time. Yeah, you might have all the electronics that everyone else has got, but it's like being here at camp. Yeah, video cameras, power banks, mobile phones, yeah. But at the same time, heat is generated by burning some wood. And you go to the toilet in a bucket with some sawdust in it. I suppose the difference is I go home to a nice warm centrally heated house with flushing toilets. But anyway, that's the war in Ukraine. It's still going on. It's going to be going on. I heard, I was watching this debate about it, and a guy quite clearly said it's going to be a multi-generational thing. It's going to go on for decades because of the Russian psyche, I suppose. And to some extent, that'll be the Ukrainian psyche. It's very similar. But the Russians are trying to solve it by throwing lots of bodies at it. But they're running out of bodies. Most developed countries are running out of young men. The birth rate in China, apparently that's well down, because they've had decades and decades of people pursuing just sons. And if you've got a society of mainly men, can't reproduce on their own without women, yeah. So your population's going to start, it's not so much going down, but the balance is changing. And it's happening in the West as well, apparently. There's more older generation than younger generation, and that's what's fucking things up. People aren't having enough kids. They're living too long and not having enough kids. Maybe we should have a war, but only send people over 30. That'll invert the pyramid. I'll pension two opposing sides of Dad's army. Yeah. But society's all strange at the moment. You know my views on the woke society we're in. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I think it's dangerous. And it's corrupt. And it's being driven by white women, would you believe? Middle class white women. Universities, they're fucking the world up. They forgot that they're just educate, and then out there brainwashing. I suppose, if I was Lord God Emperor of the country, if you wanted state funding to go to university, I'd make it a minimum requirement that you've got at least an A level in maths and an A level in English. Don't care where you're from in the world, you need an A level in maths and an A level in English to get state funding for whatever course you do. And I don't care if you're doing some sort of weird arts or women's studies. Whatever you're doing, you need an A level in English and an A level in maths. That'll stand you in good stead no matter what you do. And then a third A level, your choice. I mean, if you want to be really brutal, you could make it 3A at maths, English, and another STEM field A level. Yeah, and you don't really need any of them if you're going to study fine art or something like that. But then again, if you're going to study fine art, what use are you to the country? What wealth generation are you going to do? How many jobs are there for people with degrees in fine arts? Not a lot. And if you can't string a sentence together because English isn't a compulsory subject, you haven't really got that many transferable skills at all. But I don't know what I'm talking about. But they're arguing about MPs' salaries again. MPs think they're not paid enough. And they keep looking at industry and going, yes, but we're not paid as much as a comparable responsibility in industry. Yeah, but they're generating money, you're not. You're just sponging as an MP. So, here we go. Let's get this out. Again, if I was Lord God Emperor, or if I could start a new political party, the platform I'd be standing on is reform, parliamentary reform. MPs are paid a flat salary. They're not allowed any other job. Being an MP is 24/7 while you're an MP. So reasonable salary. I'm not saying impoverish them, but a reasonable salary, no expenses, because you're getting a fucking reasonable salary. You don't need expenses. Everything that needs to be supplied for you to do your job would be supplied. Second house, no chance. Not a job. Well, you get a second house, build something like a big bloody travel lodge close to Parliament, and they can just rent a room in that. We know where they are then. What happens with all these second homes they buy in London? Because they get allowances to buy or rent second homes and to furnish them. Do they get to keep it? It's a bloody disgrace if they get to keep that. Because the other thing is, if we had houses that they could use, then they move out and the next one moves in. But there's ways around it, I suppose, rather than just throwing money at it. More and more money at them. Sponging twats. Also, I'd tie their salary rises to local governments. They can't have a bigger pay rise than local government get. So if they limit local government, and by local government I mean all branches of government, not just local government, every branch, civil service, police, military, ambulance, whatever. If you're drawing your salary from the public purse, there is one pay rise. Percentage. That's the percentage pay rise if you're drawing your money from the state, your wages. And that includes MPs. So if they want a 10% pay rise, every fucker gets a 10% pay rise. Oh, you won't get the right people in the position. I don't know, you're going to get people that are more interested in doing the job. And yes, there's an element of corruption, so we need to sort that out. We need to have an independent investigation body that doesn't answer to anyone, except the Crown, head of state. It doesn't answer to the Prime Minister or any of the political parties, not beholden to them, totally separate, answers directly to the Crown. And with the power to jail MPs that they find fiddling. Parliamentary inquisition, that's what we need. Just to monitor MPs. It's the only thing that can monitor the goings on of MPs. That's where their power lies. And I'd move Parliament out of London. Let's face it, the House of Commons had its day, it's fallen apart, it's going to cost God knows how much to make it fit for purpose. So let's build somewhere more central in the UK. Purpose-built parliamentary town. And then we can govern what's in it and what's not in it. But to make any changes to Parliament and parliamentary procedures and how things are run and finances, you need to get a majority of MPs in one go. So you'd need to form a new political party, have people standing all over the country, and then enough poor people, enough people on the lower end of the social ladder, working class, benefit classes, yeah, say, right, I've had enough, I'm voting for this new party so we can have some political change. And then change Parliament. Day one, parliamentary salaries. That's fucking going down. Sponging bastards. Yeah, big changes needed. And also big changes needed to the judicial system. We do need a Bill of Rights. And we do need some things protected, like freedom of speech, because you haven't got any at the moment in this country. Welcome back. Oh, not doing much today. I've got the fire going, which is nice. And I've been restocking the wood store. the log store. She that must be a bird likes a fire, so she's been burning her way through the wood I'd already chopped up. I had some logs in the back of the log store, still hole that needed splitting. Well, they've been drying for nearly a year now, so I dragged them out, emptied the log store, split all the logs that were in there and put it all back in. And I had some rounds that you saw me, if you'd seen the chainsaw video, that tree I chopped up, they're being covered up around the back of the shelter, and I've now moved them into the back of the log store so they can continue drying in there for later in the year or next year, who knows. See how we go through it. Because even in the summer we like a nice fire. Only a little one, but especially of an evening, it's nice. There's 7 foot of tree trunk over there propped up against another tree. Came down some years ago, or a year or two ago, and it was very heavy, and it's been stood up on end leaning against another tree all this time. I might go and check that out. Might be worth chopping up and splitting, because it'll have dried out a bit. So that's what we came up today, just me and Bella. It's Saturday. I was looking at my watch the other day, I don't know the date, I think it's the 28th. Bear with me, I'll check my telephone, I haven't got my glasses on. 28th. It's 28th of January 2023. Thought of doing a little waffle in the woods. I did start a waffle in the woods. Didn't plan to do it, it just happened the other day. But because I hadn't planned to do it, I hadn't charged the camera battery, and then it died. Which is a shame really, because I made some earth-shattering points that if anyone had heard them would have sparked something in somebody else and the world would have been saved. Pity, because I can't remember what I was talking about, because I'm old and daft. John and a couple of lads put a log burner in the 12x12 earlier in the week. Might need a bit of finessing. He's putting a CO detector up today, but that'll be nice, especially when it's cold and windy on of an evening. There's only a small group of you, because you can go and sit in the 12x12 and get the log burner on. Drawn right there. I put a couple of drop tarps on either side of my veranda, which has made a huge difference overnight when getting a bit of, if the wind's blowing in either direction, you can just drop the tarp. And if you want to be lovely in one, drop them both. If you've got the fire on, it gets very toasty in here just in front of the shelter. What else am I having to do? Oh yeah, Cala gas. They're getting rid of the little cylinders. I think 3 point something or 4 kilogram cylinders. Little diddy ones. Traditionally the ones you use for camping. Now I'm not sure, but I believe it's the start of February. they won't exchange the small ones anymore for another small one. You have to go for the next size up, which is not a problem, not for me. I wanted the next size up, but they wouldn't exchange my cylinder. They wanted me to buy the next size up. Well, I'd already bought a small one. Anyway. But now apparently they're doing away with the little ones, so you can have the next size up. I don't know what John's up to. He's busy with ladders. I was going to stay the night, but John's brought his dogs as well, and Bella doesn't like other dogs, so I'm having to keep her on the long line. So, not a problem. Seems a little plugged. So, what other jobs have I got to do? Nothing really, I just wanted to come up and chop some wood and relax. Only brought a burger for me tea, or my lunch. Somewhere between tea and lunch I'll have my burger. Right, so what's going on in the world in 2023 in January? War in the Ukraine still going on. Lines are fairly stable at the moment because of the weather. Everyone's waiting until the weather sorts itself out, and then they'll all start proper fighting again apparently. Expecting Russian and Ukrainian offensives. Germany's agreed to send Leopard 2 tanks. America's sending Abrams. We're sending Challenger 2s. Other European countries will now send Leopards as well. Leopards are the way to go, I suppose, because there's more of them and therefore they're more standard. Challenger was designed for a war in Europe, so cynical part of me keeps thinking, is this just the West testing its equipment without actually having to put their own troops? Yeah, that's just cynical of me, I suppose. I suppose there's an element of that. Belle, get out the ditch. There's clean water there. You don't have to drink ditch water. Oh, come here, puppy. Come on. Come and settle down. There's a good girl. You're a good girl, aren't you? Well, 14 challenges, not going to make that much difference. Might, you never know. Depends how good they are in the Ukraine. If most of the Russian kit's bouncing off them, then they're going to be pretty good. But if you keep getting them bogged down or where have you, they won't be. I suppose since they've been training Ukrainians in sort of NATO tactics, they might be able to use them. Because tactics and equipment go hand in glove, don't they? Your tactics are based on the equipment you've got, and you design equipment to suit the tactics that you use. But on the same theme, but looking at a different way, economies are going to be trashed in the next somewhere between the next 5 to 10 years. I mean, you'll be looking back at this as history. We're speculating what might happen, and some people are speculating that Russia's absolutely knackered economically now. They're filling up all their oil storage. They're having trouble shipping their oil out. And they're fast filling up their oil storage. And sooner or later, their oil storage is going to be full. And all the Western specialists that were involved in the Russian oil industry have all left. And apparently, that's going to cause them a problem. I didn't realise this, but because they're pumping oil through essentially frozen ground, tundra, if they stop pumping it, the water in it freezes and it fucks the infrastructure, it fucks valves and pipes and everything else like that. And some experts reckon that if it gets to the point that they have to stop pumping oil because they've got nowhere to put it, their infrastructure might freeze up. And it could take them decades to sort it out. So much so that there might be an oil shortage everywhere. So much so that the Americans, I think, are trying to pull Venezuela out the doodads that they're in, because they've got a humanitarian crisis over there, and they're sat on loads of fossil fuels and stuff. But they reckon that's going to be a generational thing as well to sort them out. Even if they have to put troops in to sort it out, they reckon 50,000 plus American troops there will have to go in to try and sort out Venezuela, so that the country gets sorted and people get fed, because they're an energy-rich country, but they're fucked because the Marxist, Leninist, ultra-left-wing murdering cunts, I suppose. Quite happy to let the people starve. So America's pulling back from being world policemen or guaranteeing trade routes and stuff like that. Apparently the Iranians hijacked some big trading ship a while back, expecting the Americans to sort stuff out or get involved in trade negotiations or something, and the Americans did fuck all. Wasn't their ship, why should they care? Nothing to do with them. Didn't impact them. Because apparently the Americans were safeguarding trade routes as a playoff for military presence in those areas to counter the Russians, but the Russians aren't a threat anymore. Not like that. Even though they're popping up all over the place, especially in Africa. Wagner Group propping governments up all over the place. But they're going to have trouble doing that now. The Russians as a military force have proved to be fucked. And it's not the soldiers' fault as such, it's the state's fault, from what I understand. Because of that, the out-and-out corruption, they haven't been training the soldiers. You want to keep your military effective, you need to train regularly, effective training as well, not just parades, which apparently the Russians have been doing. They've been training on paper, but they've not actually been doing it because it's expensive to train people, and people have been robbing the budget left, right and centre. Russia's having to fall back on nuclear threats all the time now because it's conventional forces. No one's feeling threatened overly because they've got their hands full in the Ukraine. Ugh. I did see a report that NATO is terrified that they have a direct conflict with Russia at the moment. Not because they think the Russians could harm NATO. It's because of the horrific casualties NATO will inflict on the Russian soldiers. And because of that, because of this, the number of casualties and the amount of destruction they'll do to Russian military infrastructure right across Russia in such a short time, the worry is that that Russia will go nuclear virtually straight away because it's got no option. The crazy thing is, as it's been proved over the last 10 years leading up to all this, NATO countries don't like spending money on military stuff. They don't like going to war. It's bloody expensive. And they've all been reducing the military spend for years. And so much so the Americans are getting really pissed about it. And now everyone's increasing it. Military spend per capita has gone up because the way the Russians are behaving. But if the Russians hadn't gone round attacking its neighbours, NATO wouldn't have been spending money. They'd have been spending less. There'd have been less NATO forces, for God's sakes. It's one thing about the West, we don't really like going to war. But the bleeding heart liberals in this country seem to like us to go to war, then blame us for being at war when it turns nasty. There'll be some humanitarian problem somewhere in the world saying, oh, what's the government going to do about it? Well, short of sending bloody troops in, there's nothing much you can do about it. We should send aid. What's the point? You send aid, and the bad guys that are causing the humanitarian crisis just pinch it all. Doesn't do any good. So you have to send troops in to safeguard your aid and the aid workers. Then you end up sending more troops in and more troops in. Next thing you know, you're fucking ankles and dead people, and everyone's kicking off. You wanted them there in the first place. I can understand why the Americans want to pull back and go, no, we don't want to play world policeman anymore. It's a thankless bloody task. But who knows what will happen when the weather improves and the fighting really kicks off in the Ukraine. April, May time, I reckon. China apparently is knackered. Their economy's on the downturn, it's absolutely fucked. They've got an economy apparently based on making cheap shit. You have to do lots of electronics and stuff for other people, but it's the cheaper end. And apparently they're not very good at running the plants that make all the semiconductors and stuff like that. And somebody was worried about, well, if they might take over Taiwan and get all of their plants. And some experts reckon, well, they might get them, but they can't even run their own plants properly, so how are they going to run the ones in Taiwan? So much so, some people are saying that in 10 years' time, the world will be more reminiscent of the way it was in the 1900s. Now, I'm not saying technology is going backwards. What I'm saying is you'll have smaller trading partners. You won't be trading globally anymore. You'll be trading locally. There'll be more emphasis on self-reliance, having industries in your own country, so you can be self-reliant in things. I mean, face it, we might be able to make lots of technologically advanced weapons, but the semiconductors in them probably come from Taiwan or elsewhere. We'd have to start making semiconductors in this country, which essentially means that you'd have to start bringing all your industries that you've moved abroad back to the UK. So prices will go up. But demand is going to go down apparently, because there's not that many people in their 30s and 40s over the next 10 years or so. And apparently they're the people that spend all the money. So people aren't having children. Not enough kids in the world. Not enough kids in the Western world. And apparently, definitely not enough kids in China and or Russia. They've got a big shortage of young men. Now, India hasn't got a shortage of men at all. Apparently, the numbers really flip the other way. There's going to be a shortage of women. It's going to be nearly 50% of more men than women in India over the coming years. But China had that policy of only one child per family, and because most people wanted boys, they're going to have a lot of, well, they're going to have more boys than girls, put it that way. And if your population's dropping because you haven't been having many kids, and now you've got very old people and not many young people, you haven't got the internal markets for stuff. Not only that, how do you get your numbers back up if there's not many women? They're going to have lots of kids. So the days of women having careers in some countries might be discouraged. They'll want women at home having 5 or 6 bleeding bairns to get the population back up. There you go, we might be saved by benefit mums. Having 5 or 6 kids to 3 or 4 different fellas, spreading the gene pool out, you know what I mean? That might be the way ahead, you know. Pay women to stay at home and have kids. Make it financially a good decision for a woman to stay home and have children. We could do that with tax breaks for husbands. And extra benefits for kids. Encourage people to stay home and have children. People would say I'm being sexist there, saying, oh, women to stay at home, be housewives. Well, I suppose traditionally it's because women have children. They're the ones that yeah, this is definitely plugged in the middle. Yeah, fucking big knot of stuff there. Yeah. I suppose if you want your population to grow, somebody's going to have to raise the kids. So you can either put them all in communal creches to actually raise the kids. So basically mum gives birth and as soon as she can she's back out of work and the kids are looked after centrally. Nobody really wants that. I suppose it's alright in a dire emergency. Might have to be, but I don't think we're there yet. I think we just need to encourage people to have children. Encourage families. There's an unpopular view, isn't it? Encourage people. Financially make it a wise choice to get married, stay married and have children and stay together. Because if you stay together and you have children together, the state will help you out with the money. Make it financially worth your while. And then the state benefits because there's more kids about. We need another boom. Yeah, it's weird that we need another baby boom. Who'd have thought it? Something to be said for heterosexual couples. They can have children, and society needs children. There's nothing wrong with same-sex couples, but they don't reproduce. Not without lots of intervention, shall we say, with surrogacy and stuff like that. But I suppose it's easier and quicker if you let nature take its course. I suppose being a mother needs to be seen as something to be proud of. Society needs to praise its mothers. They're raising the next generation. So maybe we do have to look backwards to move forwards. Do things the way our parents used to do it. And our grandparents. Oh, that's not very forward thinking. Yeah. Forward thinking is getting us into a lot of shit. Really isn't drawn well, this at all. What to do? I know my views are unpopular. I can see the faces of people at work when we start talking about stuff. The horror on their faces when I express an opinion. Well, what can you do? I'm going to chop the end off this and light it again. Something amiss with this. Bear with me a second. Yeah, one of the guys was talking about this, people being woke, and somebody said, well, what do you mean woke? And we both agreed. People are woke when they won't tolerate any other opinion but their own. When I see it at work, I will criticise anything, have a different opinion, and all these young ones are looking horrified. Came about because we were talking about some bloke that was found guilty of rape, but now says he's trans and he's a woman, and he wanted to go to a woman's prison. But he's been raping women. And then we're arguing, and my view was, well, maybe we should get rid of male and female prisons. And they all looked at me and said, just have one prison. I went, no, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is get rid of a prison designated a men's prison and a woman's prison, or male and female prison, and just have a prison for people with penises and a prison for people with vaginas. Doesn't matter if male or female, how you identify. If you've got a penis, you go into the penis prison. And if you've got a vagina, you go into the vagina prison. So you could even do the same with sports. We have a league for people with willies and a league for people with vaginas. That's so fucking fair, it's unreal, that, isn't it? And they went, well, what about trans women that have had the op? I said, well, I'm quite happy for them to go to the vagina prison because they're not going to be raping anyone, are they? Well, not in the traditional male raping a woman sense. They're going to be they might sexually assault some. Oh, I'm giving up on that. Shite. Might sexually assault somebody, but yeah. So there you go. Eric's ridiculous theory: penis prisons, penis sports, vaginas prisons, vagina sports. I mean, the NHS is already doing it, isn't it? You're not a woman, you're a person with a womb or a person with a vagina. Well, let's carry that forward. Let's carry that forward a bit. I suppose part of me knows I'm being ridiculous, but that's what happens to the world at the moment. Everything's bloody ridiculous. Hey, Belle, you're not. You're a good girl. Yeah, the thing, is she a girl or is she a boy? How does she self-identify? I don't know. World's getting too complicated for me, Belle. That's why I like coming here, sitting in the woods. Just be who I am and do what I want. It's funny how everyone's got to tolerate people being themselves unless you're a white heterosexual male, in which case you shouldn't really be proud of being that. Talking about being proud, watching this thing, and it's okay to be a Scottish national, or a Welsh nationalist, or an Irish nationalist, or any other nationalist. There's only two countries where if you describe yourself as a nationalist, you're automatically assumed to be some right-wing neo-Nazi, and that's it. If you're a German nationalist or an English nationalist. Apparently we're not allowed to be proud of our countries, or our culture, or our way of life. They go, oh yeah, but Britain's role in slavery. What, stopping it? Britain's role in stopping it. Yeah, you should be ashamed of that, should we? Yeah, we should be really ashamed of the fact that we outlawed slavery and then forced the rest of the world to do the same. And forced a lot of countries under force of arms to give up slavery. Yeah. But we should be ashamed of that. Oh, but you did slavery. We did slavery, yeah, when every other fucker in the world did slavery and didn't see a problem with it. So we were the first people to go, oh, there's a problem with this. That's not really right to be locking people in chains and making them slaves. Let's stop it. Let's make it illegal. And now we'll stop everybody else doing it as well. But yeah, have to be ashamed. Oh, there's a doggy. That's Bronson. It's all right, Belle. He's not going to bother you. She's wary because Bronson's here. Stop it. Hey, no, stay. Come here, come here. Stay with me. No, sit. You stay with me, that's a good girl. He's not bothering you. I'm growling at him. There you go, just stay in front of the fire, you're nice and warm there. Shh. Stop it. Chase is coming over. You stay. I'll put you in the shelter. Oh. Shush. Shush. Go to your spot. Go to your spot. There's a good girl. There you go. They're going. They're not bothering you. Yeah, she's not bothering you. There you go. Doggies are not bothering. They're going away. Where was I? Moaning about stuff as usual. Karen wants a Chinese takeaway for tea tonight. Could be nice. What are the kids doing? Jack's wanting to go to a concert. We had an argument the other day because he wanted to dip into his savings to buy concert tickets because he's had to pay for the car insurance and a service and an MOT, or his share of it. You know, can I just, I'll put it back in. I went, no, if you're going to put it back in, you can just save the money and don't touch it. We made him save. As soon as he started work, we gave him an option. He could pay board and lodge at a market rate to me, and then he could watch me spending his money on toys for me, or we charge him a token amount of board and lodge, and he would save a regular amount into a savings account for when he leaves home and he wants to get a mortgage or whatever. And as with Charlotte, the whining, it's my money, I shouldn't have to do anything. Anyhow, he sees the sense of it and he puts it in because he can see his money going up. He's got a fair amount. He's got more than he needs for a deposit for a reasonable house here in the northeast at the minute. And it's slowly increasing all the time. But I keep telling him. The last time he wanted to dip in is because one of his mates was telling him he should buy a car. And I was like, no, you dummy. Cars cost a fortune to run. You don't need a car. Don't buy a car unless you actually need one. Anyhow, he got a job where he was going to have to travel, so I gave him the option. Same as I did with Charlotte when she needed a car for work and whatnot. I said, look, you can share our car, or Karen's car really, share that, but you pay the extra on the insurance. Whatever it costs for you to go on the insurance, you're going to pay that, and then you can pay your fair share for servicing. So you're paying for your own insurance and you're paying for half the servicing costs. And she agreed, and it gives them an insight into just how much cars cost to run. Anyway, when Jack got a job that he needed a car to get to, because he starts at daft o'clock in the morning, we extended the same offer to him. Charlotte was sulking because you would have to share it with a brother, but he agreed. I got a price to put him on the insurance. He paid that, so the insurance now is split 3 ways, as is all the servicing costs, maintenance costs. So January comes along, it needs a service, an MOT, and the insurance is due. I said, can I pay you next week? So I said, fair enough, pay me next week. And then it was, can I go and do this, buy some concert tickets? And I was like, no, you're not dipping into your savings. No way on earth are you dipping into your savings for concert tickets. It's not for that. If it had been an emergency, if it was something desperate, then yes, he could have dipped in and put the money back. But not concert tickets. I don't give a monkey's. He's not dipping in for concert tickets. But we just want them to be aware that you have to save for things in life. You can't just have everything whenever you want it. Sometimes you have to, it's a trade-off. You can have it now, but but you'd be paying more for it if you get a loan for it, because you're paying interest on that loan all the time, and it puts you in debt. And at the moment he's got no debt. What he has got is some money in the bank. And he still spends a lot on junk, which is fair enough, it's his money. But I was trying to get through to him the other night. I said, look, his mum and myself, we're not going to be around forever to pick the pieces up. As my parents were, sooner or later you have to stand on your own 2 feet. So it's in my view, it's best to teach them how to do it while they're younger. And put up the tantrums in the morning, lay the law down. You have to lay the law down and say, no, you're going to do this, or... And they've always got an option. They can move out. Move out, make your own way in the world. But he's not daft. He knows that's going to cost him more. So he's staying put. And also making them pay for things like the car insurance and the servicing costs and things like that. It introduced them to the fact that everything's got a cost. When he found out how much we're paying for gas and electric at the minute. How much? I went, yeah, exactly. Everything's got a cost. So... And it's all going up at the minute. And it could get worse. A lot worse. So... keep umming and ahhing about selling my van. Not because I particularly want to, but it is expensive to run and maintain. And I might be better off getting rid of it. Especially where it's still got some value. But and I'm not desperate to get rid of it, so if I don't get a reasonable price for it, I can just hang on to it for a bit. But if I get rid of it, I'll miss it. I like my van. Life's full of choices. So yeah, Charlotte's busy with the career, plodding on at work, volunteering for things, doing more, which is good for her. She enjoys it. She's like a mum in that respect. She just takes pleasure in doing a job well. Jack's a bit like me, I suppose. Just do what you have to do. I've never found a job that I really, really enjoy. I used to enjoy working at the museum, but then it's like everything else. We've got managers that just sickened you. Certainly sickened me. Whatever you did wasn't enough and wasn't good enough. You got to do more for less all the time. Yet generally a manager that's wanting you to do more all the time for less is generally doing fuck all themselves. I lose all respect for those types of managers, and then I do even less. Just do what I need to do, what I have to do, what they can make me do. Time to leave then. In a way, it was a good job that I got made redundant, because I couldn't afford to just leave. Such is life. It's a worrying time, though. I suppose all times are worrying to some degree. But everything we know at the minute might be coming to not a grinding halt, but a flipping round and changing totally. Because if the war in Ukraine causes more economic hardship everywhere, because the Ukraine and Russia export lots of food and fertiliser, and Russia exports lots of oil and gas. And if all of that starts drying up, and the food and fertiliser starts drying up, and countries like China that are on the knife edge, so much so that they're making overtures to America to be friendly. They're going through Canada as an intermediary, but I think they're trying to cozy up to the Americans, because I think they've realised without America safeguarding their trade routes, they're fucked. 80%, I think, of their crude oil comes from the Gulf. And the only way it can get to them is past India and Japan. both of which have got navies that can, you know, operate deep water out to sea. So Japan could stop those Gulf oil imports if India would let them, because they've got a navy, remember. But India could. They're right next door to the Gulf. They could stop the lot. And so one expert reckoned that if the oil imports stop from the Gulf, China's economy would collapse in 3 months, and then within 6 months you'd have mass starvation in China. They're very vulnerable to world trade. Everyone's vulnerable to world trade at the minute. Maybe world trade was a bad idea. I mean, look at Russia. Can't really build its own weapons anymore because so many of its components come from around the world and they can't get them now. Maybe being dependent on everyone is a good thing, because you know you can't go to war for long with anyone, because you'll run out of stocks quickly and then you can't replace them all yourself. Unless you're a knobhead, like Vladimir Putin there, who expected the Ukrainians to run away and they didn't. So let's assume some of these experts are right and things are going to go more local. Everything's going to have to be more local, more localised. Global trade's going to be a rarity. Think about the things you're going to miss. I bet you there'll be a lot of people wishing we hadn't left the EEC if that happens. We'd have to develop our own navy again to safeguard our own trade routes, which is why we had a big navy in the first place. Safeguarding trade routes. If the Americans aren't going to do it, we'd have to safeguard our own. The Dutch did the same thing. They had an effective navy to safeguard their trade routes. So, bring more jobs home. Building ships. Steel industry and coal industry would have to start again. Apparently the Germans are mining lots of coal again. They're going back to burning coal. So all of their green things are chucked out the window, because you can't have people starving. One expert reckoned that, you know, the world's poor will chuck all these green laws in the bin if it means that they have to watch the kids starve or freeze to death. I'm sat in the wood. How long do you think a small wood like this would last if this was the only fuel source? Not long at all. Paraffin heaters. The price of second-hand paraffin heaters on eBay has gone through the roof, because people are looking for different ways to heat their homes at the moment. I mean, I've got a little paraffin heater. I've got it with me today. It's in the shed. I use it up here in the cold weather. But not all paraffin heaters are created equal. If you're going to use it in your house, you need a blue flame paraffin heater. They're designed to burn with a blue flame, so they don't give off loads of CO. I mean, you don't want it yellow flamed. So like greenhouse ones aren't the same. They burn with a yellow flame, which in your greenhouse you don't really care. But if you're going to use it somewhere where you're going to be, you want a blue flame one. I know they're still made somewhere. I think you can get them in America still new. But paraffin's gone up in price. A 4-litre bottle of paraffin used to range between £7 and £9 a year ago. I was looking online the other day. I think it was B&Q. It was £12 for the same bottle. £12 for a bottle of paraffin. 4 litres of paraffin. Anyway, I had a search around and I managed to find some on offer on Amazon of all places, which worked out at £8 a bottle, but I had to buy 4, which is great. I don't mind. It's in the shed at home. I was going to bring some up today. It took me my fire up and I forgot. I'll take the fire home, top it up at home. But in the cold weather I use it. When I'm up here for the night, I'll stick my paraffin heater on and put it on low and just leave the door shut and let it warm up. So when I call it at night, go to bed, the cabin's warm. I don't leave it on while I'm sleeping, I turn it off, but at least when I go to bed, everything's warm in there. You know, sleeping bag's warm, bed's warm. You don't notice it anything. It's nice to get out of the cold into somewhere warm just before you get into bed. My fire's going down, but I'm not going to put any more wood on it. I'll leave that for she. That must be a bird. She can burn it all. The dog likes lying next to the fire. I need something to eat. I want to have a burger. It's burger time. So I want to turn this video off and have a burger. So this is another Waffle in the Woods. You don't have to listen. It's not really for anyone. I do these so that family, in moving forward in time, have got some point of reference of how silly old Grandad was thinking back in 2023. It's because I worked in a museum. Some of the more interesting things are things that people took of everyday life that you don't really think are important at the time. Audio tapes, you know, bits of home video, things like that. Because they're a snapshot of a time long gone. And in a way, this is all these are for me. They're for family use more than anything later on. But it's the view of somebody not greatly educated, and reliant totally on media, and these days the internet, for information about what's going on in the world. And my thoughts of what's going on. And they could be totally wrong. They probably are totally wrong. But, you know, if you only rely on the history from politicians and more formal history sources as you go on, you don't really know what's going on. Because the victor writes the history, doesn't it, in all conflicts. It's usually those little bits of information that surprise everyone. So, yeah, cost of living's a nightmare, wages, a nightmare. I can understand why people can't have pay rises because there's no money around to give pay rises. Nurses are pissing me off. They're not on a bad salary. And they say, oh, but they can't afford to live and they can't afford to eat. And Jesus, there was one woman there, £40,000 or nearly £40,000 a year salary she's on. Oh, I'm having to use food banks. And I'm thinking, fuck me, it's over double my salary. I don't have to use food banks. What the fuck's she eating? But as Karen pointed out, the people they're interviewing are all living in London and other big cities and where rent is stupid money. And I suppose if you're paying most of your salary on rent or mortgage payments because you've got a nice house, then you're not going to have much money left over. However, I think a lot of these people have been living to the maximum for years, and now everything's gone up. There's no giving the salaries. Tell you what would help nurses and NHS workers: cut their hours. And by that, what I mean is, if you reduce if they're working a full hour, like local government full time is 37.5 hours a week. So if they're working 37.5 hours a week, cut it down to 30 hours. Drop one shift. Leave the money the way it is, drop a shift, better work-life balance, and employ more nurses. Say, oh, we can't employ nurses. Why not? Maybe you need to change how you recruit and train nurses. At the moment, they need to go to university for 3 years. Well, let's scratch that. Let's employ ward nurses, employ them as apprentices, apprentice ward nurse, put them on a ward for most of the training. They can still do like day release or block release at college while they're doing that, and you can train them over 3 or 4 years, but you're getting them from day one. And you don't need to have a nursing degree to be answering a buzzer and helping somebody go to the toilet, or getting them a bottle so they can go if they need to use it in bed, or answering a query, or getting somebody more senior if they need it. You know, you can do that. You can do a spot of cleaning around the ward. You can do that from day one. You're an extra pair of hands. So there's the thing, you know. You don't need as many fully trained, qualified nurses on the ward, because you can have, for every nurse on the ward, you could have 2 apprentice nurses on the ward. Yeah? Probably supervised. You can work it all out. But you could get more nurses that way. Think of all those care assistants that would love to be a nurse. Train them on the ward. Once you become a ward nurse and you've passed your, finished your apprenticeship and you're a qualified ward nurse, you can then do more specialised training. You know, be a theatre nurse, a specialist nurse here, a specialist nurse there. You broaden it. You can add to that. Some people might never want to do the extra training, right? Which is fine. They can stay as a ward nurse. Just a thought. Fewer hours, same money, better quality of life. Not so stressed. But no, it's all about, oh no, we need more money. But you can have more money, but you can have less nurses. Because the wages pot is only so big. It's like a cake. You can slice it up as however you want, but it's the same size bloody cake. And if you get a bigger piece, somebody's getting a smaller piece. Yeah. There are all these nurses banging on about wanting more money. Well, who's going to pay for it? No one's got any money. The government's got no money. It's in debt. Put taxes up on the rich. I'm sick of hearing people say, oh, we'll tax the rich. Give them a windfall tax to business and stuff like that. You know what happens when you tax the rich? Before you get all these laws passed, all of their money's out the country. Squirreled away. Where you can't get to it. So you don't get much for taxing the rich until they bleed. It just doesn't happen. And the other thing is about benefits going up. I know my view on benefits is unpopular. Because I can't understand how anyone claiming benefits can be better off than working full-time on minimum wage. You shouldn't get more benefits than somebody can earn working full-time on minimum wage. If they're supposed to be able to live on minimum wage and a full-time position, how do you work out that people need more money on benefits? They haven't got going to work expenses for one, have they? I don't know. It just puzzles me, I suppose. And politicians having 2 jobs, I wouldn't allow that at all. Mind you, I'd crack down on politicians altogether. They wouldn't be allowed to have 2 jobs. And they wouldn't be allowed to claim expenses. They don't need bloody expenses. They've got a good salary. They go, oh, well, we'd get more in private industry. We'll go to private industry. Well, off you trot. Somebody will take your position. Oh, you're not getting the best person. Have you seen some of these MPs? The best person. Pfft. There's the deputy leader of the Labour Party saying that the chairman of the Tory party should be sacked because someone's made allegations against him. So you don't want to wait for the evidence. You don't want to find out if he has done anything wrong. The fact that someone's made an allegation is guilt enough. That's the left wing for you. Allegation, you're guilty. Well, suppose somebody was to say that the leader of the Labour Party, Sir Keir Starmer, has been molesting children. I'm not saying he has. But if somebody was to make an allegation, should he be locked up straight away before the evidence? No, he shouldn't. And people make allegations all the time. Unfounded allegations. That's why you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. So I've got no time for the Labour Party, because they would hang drawn quarter people based on an allegation. No smoke without fire. Fuck off. Sometimes people make allegations simply because they hate the person they're making the allegations against. It's like this thing about women should always be believed. If they say someone's raped them, then they have. No. Because some women lie. Because they're people, and people lie. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent, so I'm going to go and make my burger. We'll call that a day. Waffle in the woods again. Alright, so I'm off. Bella wants something to eat as well. See you later.